Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, slaves of the global plantation. The Vinny Eastwood Show is bad news. It's like the news, but worse. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state run by child-trafficking Satanists is Vinny's jokes. I mean, seriously, they're just awful. And my very special guest joining me today is Tammy Ockerse. And, you know, some people are a blessing, not a curse. And so thank you very much for coming up. Her website is tapinterntherapy.com. So, Tammy, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us. Would you give myself and, of course, the listenership a little bit of a background about who you are and what it is you do?
Thanks, Vinny. Thank you for having me on this show. I'm Tammy, and I'm from Zimbabwe originally. I've been in New Zealand for 14 years with my husband and 3 adult children. I have a background in occupational therapy, working in mental health, but in November with the mandates, I was mandated out of my job. So then I started, I had all the time had a background business. I was doing a bit of counseling on the side. I'm using a fabulous tool called EFT, Emotion Freedom Technique, otherwise known as tapping. And so in November, with me getting discharged from my occupational therapy job, I started growing my business as an EFT practitioner, working with people with trauma, depression, anxiety, phobias, addictions, anything really. EFT is a great tool.
Well, can you explain what it actually is?
Okay, so EFT is a groundbreaking technique combining psychotherapy and acupressure, and it brings together all the elements of exposure therapy, cognitive therapy, and somatic stimulation. So EFT, which is commonly known as tapping, it's like acupuncture without the needles. So it's often referred to as psychological acupuncture. As with acupuncture, EFT stimulates various pressure points on the face and body to relieve stress, which then alleviates many psychological based concerns. It's a powerful self-applied stress reduction method based on extensive research, and it shows emotional distress contributes greatly to illness, and EFT can address a huge range of issues by simply focusing on the issue, giving voice to the issue, and tapping on these acupressure points. So you might say, how does it work? EFT works in our minds and in our brains. It's a surprisingly simple technique, and even young children as young as 3 can use it. By stimulating the pressure points on the body with this 2-finger tapping, emotional freedom technique results in a calming effects on the amygdala. Now, we store all our memories in our hippocampus, but we store all those emotional responses like the feelings of anger or anxiety and the feelings that go with our bodies, like the horrible feelings in our stomach or in our chest, that get stored in our amygdala. But often if we have some traumas or some stresses in our life that haven't been processed, they get frozen in our amygdala. And these can be triggered continually and ruin our life, whenever we come across something that triggers them. So what EFT does is it taps on the acupressure points while we are giving voice to our problems, and it deactivates the stress response and sort of processes the memory. So it packs it away neatly, and it doesn't forget that it happened, but it just deactivates that stress response.
Now, you said you came from occupational therapy, is it?
No. EFT comes from Dr. Roger Callahan in the 1980s. He was a hypnotherapist and a psychotherapist. And he actually developed this by mistake by working with someone who had a phobia to water and using the acupressure points. And he actually developed it by mistake. And this was classified as field thought therapy, which was later was later taken up by one of his students called Gary Craig, and he further developed it into EFT, which we know it as today. And Gary Craig and Dawson Church and a lot of doctors in the States and that have used it very successfully with war veterans. And they find that even with PTSD, and even after 6 sessions, it's sort of alleviated a lot of the symptoms. There's also a fabulous doctor who works at Bond University in Australia, Dr. Peter Stapleton. She's been using it for eating disorders and things like that. And she's had a lot of great research going out on the benefits of it.
What kind of benefits are we talking about here? Because conventionally when people deal with stress, there's just a generalized malaise of medication. Take this, don't like the side effects, take this as well. Don't like the side effects of those 2 together, take this as well. Don't like the side effects of those 3 together, take this as well, and so on and so forth. And you're on 17 medications just so that you can be depressed.
Yes, for sure. I agree. And this is a holistic approach, non-medicinal approach. I'll give you a little bit of my personal background, Vinny, so you can understand how I got into EFT. I had major brain surgery as a young 21-year-old and had a long recovery, but was left with a lot of baggage, including anxiety and depression, and was on and off antidepressants and anxiety medication for many, many years. When we moved to New Zealand, I was working in an industry that was really cutthroat and was very stressed, had a really horrible boss. And I started to suffer from I started virtually having a nervous breakdown. I was in tears all the time. I just didn't want to get out of bed. I was just pushing myself to go to work, but life was terrible for me. And my husband came across this EFT online and he said, why don't you try this? And I had a look at it and I said, don't be silly. I'm not doing that. That looks like that's really woo-woo, I'm not doing that. It looks like crazy stuff. Anyway, after a few months, out of desperation, I just thought, well, it can't harm. So I started trying to do it. So I just started learning offline, tapping on these acupressure points and things. And definitely my emotional response went down. I stopped feeling so tearful. And then after a few more months after that, I actually stopped all my medications and have never been back on them again. And that's like 15 years ago. So for me, it really worked well, but I hadn't done any training in it. And then I was doing my postgrad in mental health and addictions and as an occupational therapist. And I came across a young girl who had been really traumatically abused in every possible way. And she was telling us about how she was talking to us about her recovery, her slow and painful recovery. And at the end of her wonderful story, she said, but I must sort of let you guys all know that the biggest contributor towards my mental health and my recovery was EFT. And I sort of, well, everybody's been calling me a gypsy and they laugh at me for doing this tapping. And I asked her where she did her training, which was with a wonderful lady called Liz Hart, who's unfortunately passed away since now. But I actually contacted Lizzie and I did my training with her so that I could work with trauma-based things and some more complex cases. And that took me about 3 or 4 years to train in. And then I started doing it on the side with my job, but basically not really into it until now,
So what do you mean by your experiences? Like, if I may, this being mandated out of the job thing, did that contribute to your stress and kind of like lead you into more EFT tapping kind of thing, out of necessity?
No, I'd already, it actually, EFT did help me when I was going through all the trauma, was going through all the trauma as well as many of the wonderful groups out there that, have been involved. But I had been working with EFT for a long time, but I did use tapping a lot more. You'll find in life that you'll use a lot more. And the beauty about this technique, Vinny, is that people that come and see me, I'm teaching them a tool, a valuable tool that they can pass on to their kids or anything so that they can use it whenever they need to calm down their emotional response. Nowadays, we're all stressed and, we're stressed about everything. And what happens is that we've got these parts in our brain, the hippocampus, pituitary, adrenal gland that activates this huge stress response in our brain. and causes our adrenal nerves to go crazy and puts us in a fight or flight response. Now, a lot of people nowadays, especially with what's going on in the world, they feel that their fight or flight response is activated continually. And it sort of is, because our brain is sort of tricking us to think that everything's a threat. So we're just reacting to everything as a threat. So EFT is a great tool. Once, I say to people, I'll help you put out the big fires, any traumas. We'll do some inner child work if you've got some childhood traumas. And then once you've learned this wonderful tool, you'll be able to put out all the little fires. So it's something that they're not going to be in therapy for years and years and years. Some people are in therapy for a few weeks, some for a few months, depending on what baggage they have and what they have to unpack.
And what does the current drug-based system of medicine think about this? Have they been suggested it? Have they said, "Hey guys, here's something that'll take away all your profits and allow people tools to heal themselves so they don't need you anymore"? Would you be interested in promoting that?
It's endorsed by many places in the world. As I say, Bond University, there's a lot of veteran societies and stuff in England and in America that are using it. A lot of hospitals. The UK is a lot more open. My qualification comes from EFT International, which is UK based. But obviously it's standing on people's toes. It's standing on psychologists' toes, because it's it's something that really works, and sort of it's a little bit out there. Like mindfulness was a few years ago, before mindfulness has become sort of like the next best thing since sliced bread. And obviously it's not endorsing medications and all these harmful drugs that can just make the problems worse and worse and worse. So there is a bit of resistance in the mainstream medication sort of area, but in the holistic medication and the energy psychology, it's really gaining a lot of traction and ground.
And it's doing a lot of good work, apparently. Because it works.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Things don't usually become popular unless they work, or unless they have large amounts of money backing a media campaign to push it on everybody repeatedly 1,000 times a day through 1,000 different mediums in 1,000 different ways. But that's not what we're talking about here. Because of the fact that, hey, look, new therapies come around all the time. Let's have a look at them. Do they actually work? Apply the scientific model.
Yeah, for sure. And the proof is in the pudding with the EFT. I have a lot of people that come to me and they're a little bit skeptical to begin with when they first see me asking them to tap and call out their problems and stuff. But I've had a young girl recently who had social anxiety. She couldn't leave her home. She was too scared to leave her home. And within 4 sessions, she was going back to work, back to the shops, and doing her life as she knew it before.
That quick.
So it depends. Sometimes it can be really quick. Sometimes in one session there's a huge change, and other times there's just a bit more baggage to unpack, a bit more processing to do and stuff. So it can take a little bit more time. But I always give people some homework to take home with them to speed the process along, because if they do their work in between our sessions, then I find that it helps jump, the process forward very quickly.
So this is about notation, right? David Holden told me about this, is that when he treats people, and by the way, holdenhealthcare.com, ladies and gentlemen, where's the banner? It's up here. holdenhealthcare.com, emphasis on the care. He told me that basically the reason why people are in such poor health, just in general, is because of a cascade of reasons. Who are you hanging out with? What is your job? Where are you living? Are these things making you happy, making you feel safe? That kind of thing. All these things can affect your health, and of course, diet and exercise. And if we're talking about this tapping technique, where does that fit into all that?
Well, I do a range of techniques. As an occupational therapist with a mental health background, I do CBT, I do some DBT, so helping people with sort of like mood disorders and things like that. But EFT is definitely my biggest tool. And I say to people, start EFT, use EFT every day of your life, whether you wake up in the morning and you're feeling anxious because you've got to do some public speaking, whether you've got an exam. I teach kids to sort of do some EFT techniques under the table so they can do EFT when they're in exams. You can do EFT when you're driving and to prevent yourself from getting road rage if people are being silly on the roads. So it's just a tool you can use whenever, and you can use it, in ways that people don't even know you're using it.
And you don't have to sneak behind a building or something like that in order to do it.
No, you don't. So you can be in the bus, and instead of tapping, you can just press on those points, and then you've got on each side of your fingers, you've got pressure points, so that you can just sit with your fingers under the desk, and you can press on each side of your fingers, on either side of the nail bed, and that'll help people to calm down. And I've worked with young children as young as 4, actually. I know people have worked with children as young as 3, but I've worked with young children as young as 4 who this has helped them, in school and class and things like that.
And what about yourself personally? Like, what's your story? Because nobody gets into doing something on this level unless something's happened to them that's enabled them to see the fabric of reality for what it really is and all its light and harshness.
Yeah, so that was my brain surgery that I had when I was 21, and that was sort of like a huge biographical disruption for me. It changed my life as I knew it. I was sort of in quite a different sort of crowd before my brain surgery. I was a dancer and did modeling and all sorts of things, and then suddenly I found myself with 10 kgs extra, bald, and unable to walk, in a wheelchair, and not even able to communicate very properly. So my whole life and all my friends sort of like, a lot of my friends disappeared. And so life really, really changed for me, and brought on a whole cascade of sort of emotional baggage with that.
Well, can you go into that? Because it often helps people, because many do go through serious surgeries and the long road to recovery. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I had to learn to walk again. I had to learn a whole lot of stuff. I also I had since I was really, really young, I worked a lot in the disability industry. So I worked a lot with special ed children. I ran the school for Down syndrome in Harare, Zimbabwe, and I worked a lot with spinal cord injuries, brain injuries, and people people with a whole lot of disabilities. So when I became disabled, it was just sort of gave me a deeper understanding into disability and their sort of like crosses that they had to bear. So I've got some paralysis on the left side. I wear a leg brace. I walk with a bit of a limp. People usually just think that I've injured my foot or something. And I'm totally one-handed, so I can only use my right hand. My left hand is basically just for show. And so life was very difficult for me as a young sort of like 21-year-old, just going into adulthood and just trying to discover who I was. Things were really thrown on their head, and I sold my car in Zimbabwe, which I couldn't use, and moved to the States, and spent a few years in the States as a nurse aide looking after disabled people and trying to find myself. And but I had developed these debilitating anxiety attacks. I would actually go and sit in a hospital car park because I would have anxiety attacks, like 10, 20 anxiety attacks a day, where I would just be like paralyzed with fear that I was going to die. And, everyone would say to me, it's in your head, and, like, just get over it. And I say, it might be in my head, but it's a reality. I can feel it. It's very real for me. So, and no matter what I tell my head, it just doesn't go away. So it was really, really hard. And I was very depressed about my life and the direction that it's suddenly taken. And so that's what I said. I'd gone through years and years of anxiety and depression, but I came back to Zimbabwe with a bit more confidence in my own abilities after spending a couple of years finding myself in America, and found myself my first good job, and then got married and had kids, and then we moved to South Africa when Zimbabwe sort of did a belly up, and we were in South Africa for 5 years, and then when the xenophobic attacks broke out in South Africa, we decided that we needed to get the children and ourselves into a place that was more secure, and so we came to New Zealand.
Now, something a lot of people don't know about the quote-unquote xenophobic attacks in South Africa. Could you enlighten us a little bit?
Okay, xenophobic attacks is when the actual black people were turning on their own people, because a lot of the black people from other countries like Malawi and Zambia and Zimbabwe were coming over to South Africa to look for work, and because they were taking away jobs from the local people, there was an upsurge of anger, and they turned against their own people living in their townships and stuff, and started setting them alight and burning their homes, putting tires around them and setting them alight, and doing all these horrible things. And we were driving through the town areas trying to get people out into safety, to churches and to anywhere safe places that we could get them. And one of the people in the back of the car said to me, you better be careful too, Tammy. I said, why? She said, because you're also a foreigner. You're a Zimbabwean too. And at that stage, it wasn't really affecting the white people, because it was just affecting the blacks against the blacks. But when she said that to me, and I thought, we've lost virtually everything in Zimbabwe. We had to basically pack up and leave. We weren't farmers, thank goodness, but we still sort of had to pack up and leave Zimbabwe. And now, we've got no safety. There's no security here for us. So that's when we decided to move on.
So, if I may, this is a situation which is now, becoming a very, very close reality to what New Zealand is about to become. Don't you think? I mean, you see it all over the media, race against race and economics against economics and politics against politics. And it's just this whole infighting thing that's dividing and conquering everybody. And quite frankly, anxiety provokes more stress, and people are stressed. They don't act nice to each other, and they certainly aren't willing to listen to other people's trauma in order to help them get over it, are they?
No, they're not. And anxiety and stress is the biggest contributor towards a weak immune system. So people who are in that state of anxiety and stress, they're going to get sick all the time, and they're not going to be protected against all the flus and things that are going around. So, it's really sort of important now during this time of fear, where the media have caused so much fear amongst kids and people, that people sort of get through their anxiety and fear, and, sort of so they can start strengthening their immune system and having a healthier future.
Let's think about the concept of this. So if we would apply this across the entire country, let's say people are living in anxiety, and let's say they all just turn to EFT tapping, and all these problems that they've got either disappear or start eroding to the point where they're no longer much of an issue, you'd see a great change.
Oh, a huge change. And we had groups that were doing EFT tapping sessions with the victims in Christchurch with the earthquakes, and there's groups all over the world that do EFT that go out and do tapping sessions with huge communities that are in distress, and they found that it's had a huge impact.
Can we see any literature on this online?
There's tons, and the nice thing about EFT is that you can get so much free stuff. You can virtually self-teach yourself offline. If you're just wanting it for your basic anxiety and stress and stuff, you can literally teach yourself offline. I'm not trying to talk myself out of a job here, but that's literally how easy it is. And you just really need someone to guide you, like myself. If you have trauma, or if you've got something that you just can't shift, that you sort of really need to go and work on. But the basics of EFT you can learn offline. They've made it easy, they've made it free, so it's not a money-making scheme. None of us are in it to make the money, because it works so well that we move people on fairly quickly, so it's not sort of there as a money maker for anybody.
It's kind of like a management tool. What was it they said, that the best manager is somebody who makes themselves redundant?
Yeah, for sure. It's a great coping strategy, and it's advocated a lot by a lot of health professionals out there.
And do you have any views on the political situation in New Zealand or the world or anything like that? I mean, off the ELF, off the EFT topic.
You know what, Vinny, my husband has plenty of views, and I have to say to him, like you, I really don't want to hear it. I'm not going to be an ostrich and dig my head in the sand, but I give myself the news in small sort of portions because I feel that I have to keep my energy and my vibration up so that I can be there to help people, to send out my energy to people that are in distress in this world. And I find if I get immersed in what's happening, I just put myself into a place where I can't really function. So I have to say, well, we do create our own happiness, and I have to try and stay in a good headspace without being an ostrich, but try to have a good vibration so that I can be there for my clients.
Well, it's not entirely dissimilar from how I go about things, even as a talk radio host here is that basically I don't watch the news. I don't watch other people's shows. I don't keep up to date with all the little videos and things like that people are sending me left, right, and centre. People don't even message me; they just send me links and stuff like that, and they somehow think that I've got the time or the inclination to watch them. It's like, no, I don't. Because otherwise, when you're doing a show and you're worried about 10,000 different things that you saw in the last week that have nothing to do with you, that you can't do anything about. It doesn't make for a good show, does it?
Exactly. And we've got all this gloom and doom and what is going to be happening. But, I just think, what happens if it doesn't happen? And we've wasted so many years of our life doing the dress rehearsal in case it does, I just enjoy your day to day and just be prepared. I mean, don't be silly. Prepare, learn your gardening, stock up on a few basics if you think that there's going to be a food shortage. So be prepared, but, just enjoy your life because we don't know how long it's going to be.
There's not a whole lot of people saying that in a very realistic sense of the word, because to be prepared and enjoy your life, people think you've got to do one or the other.
I think it's having a balance, You've got to keep a balance. You can't be too tipped over on the one side, because then you're just going to live in fear and it's going to be terrible. As you say, people do send me also stuff all the time, and I'm just like, I don't have time for this. Send me an inspirational quote. Send me something like a nice song or something, but don't just send me all this stuff all the time,
Yeah, I mean, can I do something about it? Is this relevant to me?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I mean, like, for example, when all of this kerfuffle with medicine happened recently, I'm not allowed to mention certain words and things of that nature, which is kind of testament to our new online reality. Everybody else started waking up, as it were, and they come to me as if I didn't see this coming, as if I didn't know the story before they told me, and hadn't been following the same vein of information for years and already understand where it's going. And thus, I'm not panicking. I'm just observing, going, I'm not excited and coming up with all these different ideas about what to do about it and don't implement any of them.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
I just keep going on. Keep my headspace clear. Enjoy my life. Do my work. Right?
Yeah.
Which
Otherwise,
is ostensibly the work is trying to help people to deal with the fact that once they've woken up, they don't go nuts as a result.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be hard for a lot of people, and but I look at my experience in Zimbabwe, when things turned to, crap over there, where we had food shortages galore. We had petrol queues where you had to queue up for a whole weekend to get 20 liters of petrol. We had water cuts where we would only get water maybe for a few hours once a week, and electricity cuts and stuff. And people pulled together and we survived. People would phone you up if they had water, come for a shower, come for a pool party. You take your barbecue into the fuel queue with you, and have a barbecue and a social while you're sitting around for 24 hours waiting for fuel, and push each other's cars forward. You make do with what you can find in terms of food. Now, I'm not sure what the food shortages are going to be like, but I think if they're anything like we experienced in Zimbabwe, I think that the people will pull together and survive.
Well, one can only hope. I remember I had James Corbett on the show one time, and he was talking about all these different freedom modalities: cooperation, voluntarism, and small communities, small societies, urban currencies, and permaculture clubs and groups and things of that nature. But theoretically, if you just look around your neighbourhood, assuming you're not living in a overly urbanized zone, you've got a whole bunch of people with backyards that got no food grown in them, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And it's certainly possible and within the realm of reach to be able to just knock on all of their doors and say, hey, do you want to join the neighborhood permaculture club? And we're going to use everybody's backyards to grow all sorts of different vegetables, which we're all going to share and help grow and harvest.
And this is very true. And I believe there's some people in Kimu areas and that are already having community gardens where people can go and have their bit of space and plant their gardens, and they're sharing the gardens. So this is already something that's been cultivated and promoted,
Cultivated, so to speak. And also, I think socially, society is very much changing as well. I think particularly just with the advent of phones. All right, I don't generally ever have a phone in my hand when I'm having a conversation with somebody. And I feel like one of the few nowadays, you know? Like the only one who's actually paying attention to what people are actually saying to you.
Yeah, for sure.
And so as a result, we've got this non-communication thing that's going on here, and the Mayo Clinic looked into this. And basically what it does is it turns your brain into the brain of a crackhead, more or less. You need that hit, you need that dopamine release, and you can't help but look at it. And I'm very conscious about this because, my life, my career is spent in front of screens. And even when I'm not in front of screens working, I'm in front of screens being entertained. And I can't help but think that it's affecting me in very vast and negative ways. And this is part of the full spectrum of things that are really affecting all of us, even those who know that it's affecting us. You just can't escape from it.
Yeah, it is like a drug. Exactly as you said, it's like a drug. And it would be great if people could give themselves a tech break for even, I know people that will go for 7 days and give themselves a tech break where they're just not going to touch their phones or their computers or anything, and just have a complete clear out from that.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like eating junk food, isn't it? It's junk food for the mind, and sometimes you just eat some healthy stuff. Look at something that's written down rather than.
For sure. Just get out into nature and just sort of appreciate what we have around us. We've still got a few good days of weather here and there.
What do you appreciate most about life?
What do I appreciate about life? I appreciate my family. What do I appreciate most about life? I appreciate lots of little things. I appreciate a good book. I appreciate that my faith in my life. I appreciate my animals. I appreciate a lot of stuff. I practice gratitude. So, Vinny, I wake up every day and I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for, on that day. So if you start practicing gratitude and writing down what you're grateful for every single day, you'll start to see the blessings in your life, and you'll start to see that there's so much in your life to appreciate and be grateful for. And they say the practice of gratitude is a huge it combats depression. You cannot be depressed if you're practicing gratitude on a regular basis.
Well, I just thought about this concept as well. Like, what do you wake up and do every morning in order to make yourself a good morning? and I've got my own morning techniques. Getting up really, really early and getting on the ball. I like going to bed early, and I like getting up early. I like getting half a day's work done before anybody else gets out of bed.
Yeah.
That's how I start my day, and I do it my way.
Yeah.
And I appear to be very, very few in number with regards to this. A lot of people staying up late and starting their days off bad, and it's just like, gosh, you can't tolerate it, man. You just can't have that kind of stuff in your life, because it doesn't generate anything positive. It's a downward spiral. It's not an upward spiral.
Yeah. No, we have to learn to self-care better. And I also early to bed, early to rise, and I get up. I wish I could say I go for a walk or exercise. That's on my goals, my future goals, which I'm trying to sort of establish as a habit. But it's sort of I do the exercise sort of 1 day, 2 days a week, but haven't got it down to every day. But hopefully within a few months I can establish that. But I do my gratitude practice, and I also put myself in a bubble to protect myself from the day, from all the negative energy out there. I deal with a lot of clients and their baggage, so I want to keep myself in a bubble so that I don't absorb all their energy, so I can stay in a good space. And yeah, so that's a good start to the day if people want to use that idea. It's quite easy. You just imagine yourself in a protective bubble. Mine's a water bubble. I'm a Cancer star sign, so I use a water bubble, and it just deflects all the negative energy for the day.
I'm a Capricorn. What kind of element would I use? Would I use a fire bubble around me? Like, rah!
Oh, you could
stress comes at me and it just burns up.
You could use a firewall, Vinny. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. The Vinny Eastwood firewall. Ain't nobody getting through it, Ain't nobody stressing me out today, brother.
For sure. You're on fire.
It's the visualization, right? And I was just thinking about those self-management techniques, and sometimes we forget these in life. You come to a certain point and you're really grounded and whatnot, and then something will change, and then you forget all your habits that helped you to live your happy life. All of a sudden, you've got to reintegrate them.
Yeah, for sure. And there's just a few things you need to have up your sleeve. There's a few techniques that you've got to have, like your distracting techniques if something bad is happening to you, or if you're feeling crappy or reading something crappy, to take yourself and do something that's healthy, like go for a walk, go for a jog, go make yourself a nice cup of tea, go for a shower, read a book, distract yourself so that you're not sort of like sitting in that space, that headspace that's making you feel bad.
What are these techniques like in terms of daily life? Let's have a look at the genuine population here, because EFT, you can do it while you're driving, you can do all of these kind of things, but there's a whole other management technique of how to manage your health, your psyche, your spirit, and that kind of thing, as well as your finances, etc., etc. How do you keep these things balanced in your life?
I use a whole bunch of techniques. So I have a sensory corner in my house where I have sort of my smellies and my gadgets for playing with and stuff. So clients can go to my sensory corner if they're needing to get to a good headspace. I also I've lost my train of thought here, Vinny. So
management techniques for how to deal with the everyday stresses. I forgot what I was talking about.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so yeah, oh my goodness. Yeah, I have a lot of techniques. I have my best one that I find is so great for people is I call it go to their happy or their safe space. So Vinny, I'll do a demo with you online here. Now, so if you have you got a picture, like a visual image in your mind of something that happened in your life, like a function or an experience that made you feel so happy and so safe, like something that you visualized to put you in a good zone?
You're going to have to give me a minute here, because You know, just being a conspiracy theorist for 15 years, you know, the illusion of safety just sort of escapes you. It
Okay,
was
well,
just,
that makes you feel happy. That makes you feel happy. Maybe the birth of your daughter or some special occasion that makes you smile.
oh, yeah, I got it.
Okay, so when you're feeling stressed, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to notice your breathing now. And now I'm wanting you to close your eyes and I'm wanting you to go to that image and think about that image and look at that image.
Yep.
Right now, while you're there, I'm wanting you to notice what's happening to your breathing.
Yeah.
Can you feel that whole response slowing down, that you're breathing deeper and slower?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I get my clients to practice going to their happy or their safe space often, because with these techniques, like any breathing technique or anything, if you practice all the time, when you need to go there, it'll be easy to go there. You don't want to leave it till you're in a state and then trying to find your happy place. You want to practice it continually so it becomes a habit, so that you can pop into that safe bubble whenever you need to go into that safe bubble. Some people have a picture. If they can't think of an image, I ask them to think of a bubble, like a color bubble, like a pink bubble with fluffy cushions, and make it all foo-foo and stuff. So they go into their pink bubble and they can feel safe and they can just sort of go back there whenever they're feeling distressed. If something on the outside world is distressing them, they can just go to that place.
I mean, what I'm visualizing is when I'm actually just playing with my band, and we come up with a new song or something off the top of our heads. That's where the magic is, and that magic happens in radio as well to an extent. But there's nothing like creating a new song off the top of your head, man. It's something really beautiful and magical to do with other musicians, and you put yourself in that space and just.
Yeah, and your whole autonomic immune system just calms down. You can't be making cortisol when you're in that space of relax and contentment, can you?
What's problematic about it, though, is that the band's basically broken up because of the lockdowns, etc. My guitarist had to move down to frickin' Taumarunui, so we haven't really been able to practice or jam for a long time. Recently saw him and jammed out a few new songs and stuff, just him and me with the guitar, that kind of thing. So on top of feeling that great sensation, then as soon as I come back to reality, I go, oh yeah, that's right, I can't do that anymore.
But you can remember those magic moments.
Yeah.
And you can hold them as frames in your mind to go back to whenever you need to be in that happy space.
Well, precisely. Well, what's problematic is that immediately after you come out of that happy space, you're back in reality, which reminds you that happy space which created it doesn't any longer exist. And then it kind of makes, and then you're back in the loop again.
Yeah, but you know what happens? It's not really back in the loop, because when you're in that state of fight or flight, then we react, we don't respond. So our tempers flare up, we react, our emotions just go crazy. But if we can get into that happy space to calm down that emotional response, then we can choose to respond, and we can choose the way we behave and react, So it's sort of like it's a DBT skill where you stop. It's called a stop skill, where you stop, you take a step back, you observe the situation before you proceed. So it's giving you that few minutes to get in control of what's going on in your body, to stop that fight or flight response, and to be able to come back with a more sensible mind instead of an emotional mind.
Yeah, I was watching a video this morning about alpha male techniques and things like that. And they were saying that when there's two guys like just fighting at a bar or something like that, and one guy's really calm and centered, is going, "What are you doing, man? Are you all right?" And the other guy's screaming, and his friends are holding his back and stuff like that. Who's the woman attracted to? The guy who can hold his shit together, right?
Exactly.
And I think that this is because the video person said that it's because women want to feel safe, and of course nobody really feels safe about around somebody who you have to walk on eggshells around and just fly off the handle left, right, and centre. Nobody, not even men.
And the man who's flying off the handle doesn't feel safe about himself either. There's lots of insecurities there. That's why he's reacting the way he does. So it's helping him to discover his safe spaces so that he can react differently.
And this is a kind of across the board now, because I think we've got so many unconscious habits that are now affecting the population and the various cults that we all might be indoctrinated into. And first syllable of culture is cult. So if you have any form of culture, you're at least part of something. And these things are actually programming our behaviors, and they aren't programming them for us or to be good for us. It's just somebody else's idea that we're going along with, that we don't know whether or not it works, but it may appear to work, and that's why we keep doing it. We get into a habitual cycle with our beliefs.
Yeah. And I think we attach too much meaning to human respect, what other people think of us. And I as a young 30-year-old, even in my 40s, I was just always worried about what people thought of me. And it was so freeing and so liberating when I got to a point where I thought, I don't need to worry about what people think of me, because I'm happy with who I am,
Yeah. I mean, being happy with who you are, is that a difficult thing, or is it an easy thing? Is it a shift of mindset? Because occasionally I'm happy with who I am, but sometimes I'm really not.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty normal. I think you've got to just realize that you've got to give yourself some self-validation and say to yourself in the times when you're not happy with yourself that you've done the best that you could with what you had, and that's good enough.
Did I do the best I could, though? I could have done better, And this is something I was thinking about just this morning as well. You can't really compare yourself to anybody else. Like, if I compared myself to other talk radio hosts and their audiences and things like that, I'd feel really bad about myself considering how much work I put in.
Yeah.
But I just kind of consider myself, what was I doing yesterday? And then what am I doing today?
Yeah, and for people like you, Vinny, who is a perfectionist, and we've had this conversation before, it makes it harder because, as we've discussed, perfectionism is the enemy of progress, and you're really hard on yourself. You're kicking yourself in the backside every step of the way. So you're self-critical also,
Well, I was just thinking of it as like, am I really self-critical? Am I really kicking myself down and stuff like that? Maybe to a certain extent that's true. I think the main problem that I have is that there's things outside of my control, completely outside of my control. People who don't like what I'm doing and can do something about it. The censorship and all of that kind of stuff. That's one of the things that triggers me, essentially, not being in control of my life because of somebody else's choices when I haven't hurt anybody or damaged anybody's property. That's it. That stuff really stresses me out, especially if it concerns my career or my relationships or something like that. People trying to control me, I don't like it. Can't handle it. Don't want to tolerate it.
Yeah, a lot of people are experiencing that at the moment, Vinny, and I know it's been really, really hard for you, especially with your media and everything. And that's the only advice I can say is just to get tapping, because that's going to be one of the biggest tools that's going to help you to manage your feelings around that.
Indeed. Speaking of managing things, I haven't even managed to plug my sponsors yet properly. Ladies and gentlemen, please, if you would be so kind as to go to thevinnyeastwoodshow.com/donate.html and have a look at our little donation buttons for PayPal, KiwiBank, and you can even become a Patreon of my band. We're still putting up lots of tracks and things like that. We've got, like, I don't know, 150 unfinished songs, and maybe like 180 un-Swedish ones. But anyway, there's if you do donate to the VinnyEastwoodShow.com, you can, of course, get a private call with me, and you can request a guest to come on the show. Additionally, you'll be able to join the Secret Donors Club on Facebook. And I would like to encourage people to start up an automatic payment from between $5 and $100 a month, maybe $5 a week or something like that, just to help keep the show running as it has been running since 2008 with public support. I came up with the world's worst business model. I said, Vinny, let's make money telling the truth. You just need naivete and enthusiasm, they say, if you want to be successful at something. Speaking of which, HoldenHealthCare.com, emphasis on the care. David Holden is a naturopathic oncologist who's been treating people for nearly 40 years, and his team have over 100 years worth of experience in the game to bring to the table. They work with you and get to know you to really understand what your health problem is and actually how to solve it. So if you're interested and you've been having a problem with the medical system, you can go to HoldenHealthCare.com for David Holden, a naturopathic oncologist, and there's a medical disclaimer there on the website somewhere in case you're one of the government people watching, which I know you are, which again, I'm not appreciating it, bro. Go away. Yeah. Anyway, reopen.nz, as well as our other sponsor, a directory of anti-mandate, pro-choice, all-inclusive businesses in New Zealand. And you can add your Freedom Business to that list, and all of the other wonderful businesses from around New Zealand and across fields have added in there. So please do go to reopen.nz, and this is all, of course, with the disclaimer: the Vinny Eastwood Show does not endorse the breaching of COVID-19 rules because of my bail conditions. And now my very special guest is Tammy Ockerse, and thank you very much for joining us today, Tammy. We've got about less than 10 minutes left in the broadcast. Is there anything on your mind that you think people really need to hear, something that you haven't really been talking about because there's no platform for it?
No, I think I've actually said everything I wanted to get across, Vinny. I just encourage people, if you're needing some therapy or some counselling or to learn some coping skills, to please look at my website. Please get hold of me. I'd love to offer you a 15-minute complimentary phone call just to assess your needs and see whether I'm the right fit for you.
Indeed. tampandturntherapy.com is Tammy's website. And I also want to talk about just trauma in general, how it affects the body, right? Because a lot of people think that this is all just in the mind, but the body gets affected by the mind and vice versa. Do you know much, or could you explain about the relationship between that?
Yeah, it does. The body can, the trauma can affect the body in many ways. A lot of people have pain. They have sort of like autoimmune conditions like fibromyalgia that can be triggered through trauma. So if you learn to manage your trauma, if you unpack that trauma that hasn't been processed, then a lot of people get relief from all their pain conditions and skin conditions, insomnia, all the things that trauma can affect your way of life.
Trauma affects your way of life in so many different ways, because I think it's not entirely dissimilar from becoming a conspiracy theorist, quite frankly, because you walk out and you're so traumatized by learning about all this stuff or by something that happened to you that now everywhere you go you see something that kind of triggers you just a little bit, and it sort of destroys your life somewhat.
It is, and a lot of people don't realize they've got trauma because something might have happened to them when they were really young, and now that they're an adult, they think, oh, well, that wasn't traumatic, that couldn't have been traumatizing for me. But if you go back and you do inner child work, you bring up, like that 5-year-old who had that memory that might have not been too embarrassing, the memory of the teacher making them stand up in class. And as an adult, you think, well, that can't be traumatic. But as a 5-year-old, it could have had huge repercussions for that person and their life, So it's going back and looking at what traumas people had at different ages, because you don't always remember them as an adult.
Could you cite an example?
So I'll have a person who comes to me and they say that they feel really anxious and they've got this feeling in their stomach and they're scared. And I'll ask them to go back and try and remember the first time that they ever experienced that sensation and that feeling. And they'll go back, they'll close their eyes and they'll go back. And often one of them will say to me, oh, well, just a recent example, my client said to me, yeah, it was when I was about 5 years old and mum left me at school and it was raining and I felt really abandoned. So she had all this abandonment issues stemming from an experience of mom leaving her at school when she was 5 years old and it was raining and she had this fear. And that was the first time she had felt that feeling, that sensation. So we cleared that sensation. We did some inner child work and we cleared that sensation and that feeling of fear and abandonment. And then we went through and then we could map out, we could do a mind map of all the times from when she was 5 till when she was 29 of when she had felt that. And we sort of mind mapped it out so that we could go through and work on each specific incident so that by the time we got to 29, she had cleared all those past feelings of fear and abandonment.
So it's kind of like a ladder that sort of each rung comes in and it all is one ladder. And until you've cleared out all the rungs, the ladder's still there and you can be triggered immediately by seeing what you see or feeling what you feel.
Yes, but often clearing one memory will deactivate the stress response on some of the other memories. Often one is holding them all, intact. So if you clear one, it can often collapse. It's like a tabletop. You've got a tabletop, the top of the table, you've got anxiety, and you've got all these legs holding up that anxiety. So we're trying to get rid of the legs so we can collapse that tabletop of anxiety.
Yeah. Dustify it, pancake it, 9/11 style, except without the massive health effects of inhaling asbestos afterwards, which is why it was, of course, deemed illegal by the EPA to control demolition the towers on 9/11. Incidentally, the EPA then said, hey, it's safe to go downtown, just so that they could get the stock market back open and trade all their put options on the plane companies that incidentally came in at 30,000 times the normal rate that day. I'm sorry, it's just a side issue. Nobody need to enter into any of this stuff. Trust me. If you don't want to know, ladies and gentlemen, you don't want to know. And sometimes it doesn't even help you knowing. All right? This is what I've found, is that there's a certain amount of research that you can do that is useful, that you can apply in your own life, and there's a certain amount of research which is just fluff. Oh, that's really interesting. Doesn't help me any, but I know that now. All right. With that being said, thank you so much, Tammy, for your time today. And final words, blessings to the audience and whatnot, and some shameless self-promotion, if you might.
Thank you so much, Vinny.
All right. Cheers. Thank you very much, ladies. Gentlemen, slaves of the global plantation, the Vinny Eastwood Show is bad news. It's like the news, but worse. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state run by child-trafficking Satanists is Vinny's jokes. I mean, seriously, they're just awful.